The video opens by describing an unseen emotional heaviness spreading across society, a quiet undercurrent changing how people act and feel. Something intangible yet deeply felt has settled into the collective atmosphere of 2025. It's not always visible on the surface, but you can sense it in the way people move, speak, and look at one another. There's a weight in the air, like an invisible pressure shaping our moods and reactions. The narrator captures this feeling perfectly, an unseen emotional heaviness quietly reconfiguring human behavior. It's as if the world is holding its breath, unsure of what's coming next. People walk through life more cautiously now, their eyes scanning, their voices subdued, as if carrying unspoken questions they can't quite put into words. Daily life feels slower, more detached and emotionally drained. Kindness has become rare. The rhythm of modern existence has subtly changed. Once vibrant spaces, cafes, markets, even online conversations, now carry a muted energy. The warmth that used to color daily interactions has dimmed, replaced by politeness without presence, smiles without spark. It's not that humanity has lost its goodness, but that it's grown weary. Each day feels a little heavier, every exchange slightly more distant. We scroll past each other's lives on screens, but rarely pause to connect. The laughter in public places sounds forced, the eyes behind it tired. Even simple courtesies like holding a door or offering a kind word feel like rare gifts instead of normal gestures. Kindness itself has become a precious commodity, something people want but forget to give. The narrator invites viewers to breathe, ground themselves, and prepare to explore why humanity feels spiritually and emotionally off balance. Sensing this disquiet, the narrator offers something gentle yet powerful: a moment to breathe. It's not just a relaxation technique, it's a call to return to presence. Viewers are guided to exhale the tension of their day, to release the invisible burdens they've been carrying without realizing it. In that pause, the tone shifts from observation to introspection. The narrator suggests that what we're experiencing isn't merely social exhaustion or digital overload. It's a deeper imbalance, a spiritual fatigue that runs through the collective heart of humanity. The video invites us to explore not just what is happening, but why we feel so disconnected. Is it the noise of the modern world drowning out our inner quiet? Or the illusion of constant connection masking an epidemic of loneliness? Whatever the cause, the first step to understanding is to slow down, to breathe, to feel, to notice. In a time when the world feels cold and uncertain, the simple act of grounding becomes a rebellion, a way to reclaim our humanity, one breath at a time. Despite being more connected digitally, people are lonelier and more fragmented than ever.
Thank you, that's very
We
kind.
live in an era where connection has never been easier, yet genuine connection has never felt more distant. With a single tap, we can reach anyone, anywhere, at any time. But behind the glow of our screens, there's a quiet ache, a loneliness that technology cannot soothe. The digital world promises togetherness, but often delivers isolation. Notifications mimic attention, emojis replace emotion, and endless scrolling substitutes for meaningful presence. People are surrounded by messages, voices, and opinions, yet they feel unseen and unheard. The paradox is painful. The more connected we become, the more divided we feel inside. It's as though humanity has built a vast web of communication that no longer transmits true warmth. Social media and modern life amplify anger, division, and emotional fragility. Once, our words were shared face to face, softened by empathy and tone. Now, they travel instantly through cold networks, stripped of nuance and amplified by algorithms that thrive on outrage. The result is a culture perpetually on edge. Every disagreement becomes a battlefield. Every opinion feels like a threat. Online spaces that once united communities have become arenas of hostility, where sarcasm replaces sincerity and comparison breeds quiet despair. The pressure to perform, to appear happy, successful, or enlightened, has created a fragile kind of selfhood, one that easily shatters under criticism or neglect.
Thank you.
Modern
Yes,
life
that's
moves
right.
fast, demanding constant
see.
attention, yet offering little nourishment for the soul. We are overstimulated but underfulfilled, surrounded by noise, yet starved for meaning. This isn't just technological or political. It signals a deeper spiritual transformation predicted by ancient prophecies, where love grows cold and ego replaces compassion. The narrator suggests that this collective unease cannot be explained solely by politics, economics, or technology. Beneath these surface causes lies something far older and deeper, a spiritual shift that ancient traditions once foretold.
Oh, thank you so much.
Across prophecies and sacred texts, there are warnings of a time when the heart of humanity would begin to cool, when self-interest would overshadow empathy, and when truth would be traded for convenience. In many ways, that time feels like now. The world hums with progress, but its spirit trembles with disconnection. Compassion, once the glue of society, is being replaced by ego, the desire to win, to be seen, to dominate rather than to understand. Yet within this spiritual darkness lies a silent opportunity to awaken. This disconnection is not the end of humanity's story, but the signal of a turning point, a moment inviting us to remember what it truly means to love, to listen, and to be human again. The drumbeat of change is growing louder. Humanity is moving through a spiritual storm. It begins subtly, like a faint vibration underfoot, a low, rhythmic pulse that few notice at first. But as time passes, that drumbeat grows louder, echoing through every corner of human life. The narrator describes it as the sound of a world in transition, the steady rhythm of an approaching spiritual storm. It's not a storm of rain or thunder, but of energy, emotional, moral, and unseen. The world feels charged with tension, as if something deep within the human psyche is being stirred awake. Old systems tremble, familiar patterns no longer fit, and a collective restlessness fills the air. This storm is both external and internal. It disrupts not only the structures of society, but also the calm within our hearts. Humanity is standing in the eye of this invisible tempest, confused, ungrounded, and searching for meaning in the chaos. Everyday life feels tense. From driving to online discourse, irritation and hostility dominate. You can feel it in ordinary moments. The way tempers flare on the road over small inconveniences. The way conversations online turn sharp and defensive within seconds. Even casual exchanges, once effortless, now carry a strange edge, as if everyone is holding unspoken frustration just beneath the surface. People are quick to react, slow to forgive.
So sorry.
Patience has become fragile. Empathy feels like an endangered virtue. What used to be routine now feels emotionally charged. Something as simple as driving to work or scrolling through a comment thread can feel like walking through a field of invisible static. The emotional climate has shifted, not just in isolated cases, but everywhere at once. The narrator attributes this to unseen spiritual forces, energies of confusion and hostility influencing collective mood, but reminds us that human goodness remains intact beneath the surface. According to the narrator, what we're witnessing is not merely social decay or stress, it's the effect of spiritual turbulence. Invisible forces, he explains, are at work. Energies of confusion, division, and hostility moving silently through humanity like an unseen wind. These forces feed off fear and uncertainty, distorting perception and heightening emotional volatility. Yet the message isn't one of despair. Beneath all this agitation Human goodness still lives. The storm may shake the surface, but it cannot destroy the soul's light. Each person still carries the capacity for compassion, forgiveness, and renewal. The narrator urges discernment to recognize that when we encounter anger or cruelty, we are often witnessing symptoms of deeper spiritual unrest. The challenge of our time, then, is not merely to survive the storm, but to stay centered within it, to remember our shared humanity even as the winds of confusion rage around us. Discernment is introduced as the ability to see beyond surface reactions and recognize deeper spiritual agitation. In a world clouded by confusion and emotional intensity, the narrator presents discernment as a vital spiritual tool, the inner sight that allows us to perceive truth beneath appearances. It is not just intellectual understanding, but a deep spiritual awareness. Discernment helps us look beyond someone's anger, fear, or defensiveness and recognize the hidden pain or spiritual unrest driving those emotions. It's the art of seeing what the physical eye cannot, the invisible influences shaping human behavior. The narrator suggests that many of the conflicts we face, whether online arguments or personal tensions, are not simply the product of bad temper or misunderstanding, but symptoms of a deeper spiritual agitation sweeping through humanity. To practice discernment is to pause before reacting, to listen before judging, and to sense the energy beneath words and actions. In doing so, we begin to perceive the unseen currents moving through our world and within ourselves. We are urged to respond with compassion, not judgment, and remain wise without succumbing to bitterness or paranoia. Discernment, however, is not about labeling others as lost or corrupted. True spiritual insight is always paired with compassion. The narrator warns that clarity without love easily turns into cynicism, and awareness without empathy breeds isolation.
Ridiculous.
In this turbulent time, wisdom must walk hand in hand with gentleness. To respond with compassion doesn't mean ignoring wrongdoing, but understanding its roots. When we encounter hostility, we are invited to see beyond the reaction, to recognize the woundedness behind it. This approach transforms the way we engage with the world. Instead of mirroring negativity, we become calm centers amid the chaos. Discernment without kindness hardens the heart. Compassion without discernment blinds the mind. The challenge is to hold both, to stay awake but tender, aware but not bitter, strong but never cold. Humanity stands at a crossroads between a true sacred order and a counterfeit illusion that mimics goodness but feeds ego and fear. The narrator paints a vivid image of our collective moment. Two paths lie before humanity. One leads toward restoration, a sacred order rooted in truth, humility, and compassion. The other dazzles with false light, an imitation of goodness that flatters the ego while starving the soul. This counterfeit narrative appears comforting and righteous, but its foundation is built on fear, control, and self-worship. It offers the appearance of progress, but hides spiritual decay. Discernment allows us to tell the difference, to feel when something resonates with truth or merely imitates it. At this crossroads, the narrator calls on each of us to choose wisely, to align with authenticity over illusion, love over pride, and spiritual clarity over seductive falsehood. The false light offers temporary comfort and control while eroding empathy and authenticity. The narrator warns that not all light is pure. In the modern age, humanity is surrounded by a false light, an illusion of progress and positivity that comforts the surface but starves the soul. This false light appears as success, convenience, or even enlightenment, but its glow is artificial. It soothes temporarily, offering control and stability, in a world of uncertainty. Yet beneath that polished exterior lies something hollow. The more we depend on this false brightness, the validation from social media, the pursuit of image over essence, the craving for status or approval, the more disconnected we become from our authentic selves. The false light promises clarity, but blinds discernment. It promises unity, but breeds quiet competition. Over time, it erodes empathy, dulling our ability to feel deeply for others. The narrator reminds us that comfort without truth is deception, and that to truly awaken, we must dare to step out of the glow of illusion and face the honest light of the soul. Outward success hides inner emptiness. Self-preservation replaces connection. Modern life often celebrates appearances over substance. The world applauds productivity, achievement, and visibility. Yet many who seem to have it all quietly wrestle with emptiness.
Thank you.
Outward
Yes,
success
that's right.
has become a mask to hide
I
inner
see.
fatigue. We measure worth by performance, not presence. In this climate, self-preservation becomes the new instinct. Guard your energy, protect your peace, avoid vulnerability. But as walls rise, bridges crumble. The instinct to protect ourselves often isolates us from the very connections that could heal us. People no longer truly see one another. They analyze, compare, and retreat. Authentic human exchange is replaced by cautious interaction, where every word is filtered through fear of judgment. The irony is tragic.
Excuse me, I
In
think you
trying to
dropped this.
preserve ourselves,
thank you so much.
we lose the essence of being human, openness, trust, and genuine communion. Emotional detachment and moral fatigue signal a spiritual erosion, a loss of empathy that transforms social coldness into the new normal. This growing detachment is not just emotional exhaustion, it is a sign of spiritual erosion. The narrator describes it as the slow cooling of the collective heart. Empathy, once the quiet force binding communities, is fading. Acts of kindness now feel exceptional rather than expected. People scroll past suffering with indifference, numbed by overstimulation. This moral fatigue is dangerous because it disguises decay as normalcy. When love feels optional and compassion becomes inconvenient, society begins to lose its soul. Yet even here, there is hope. The recognition of this coldness is the first step to healing it. By rekindling empathy through listening, helping, and forgiving, we can resist the false light's pull and restore warmth to a world that desperately needs it. Small gestures of kindness now hold transformative power. In an age overwhelmed by noise, conflict, and emotional fatigue, the narrator reminds us that it is often the smallest gestures, a smile, a listening ear, a gentle word, that carry the greatest force for healing. These moments of kindness may appear insignificant in a world obsessed with grand gestures and public displays, yet their quiet frequency ripples far deeper than we realize. When someone pauses to help another, offers forgiveness instead of retaliation, or simply shows genuine presence, they interrupt the prevailing current of coldness. Such acts remind us that the human spirit still breathes beneath the layers of apathy. The narrator suggests that in times when the collective heart grows numb, even a single act of sincerity can rekindle warmth in places where it seemed extinguished. Kindness, then, is not weakness. It is a form of quiet strength, an energy that heals without demanding recognition. The narrator calls them quiet acts of resistance that restore humanity's emotional fabric. In this context,
quite all right.
kindness is not merely good manners, it is rebellion. The narrator describes these gestures as quiet acts of resistance, subtle yet powerful
Thank you.
defiance against the forces that seek to divide, numb, and dehumanize us. Each moment of compassion pushes back against a culture of indifference. Each act of understanding becomes a protest against spiritual decay. When we choose empathy over ego or patience over anger, we are repairing the invisible threads that bind humanity together. These threads, woven from trust, love, and shared humanity, form the emotional fabric of our collective existence. Over time, the narrator explains, this fabric has been torn by fear, competition, and technological detachment. But every small act of kindness, though seemingly minor, becomes a stitch in the great mending of the human soul.
I'm not going to argue with you.
In this way, the personal becomes planetary. Our individual goodness becomes a contribution to the collective healing. Compassion becomes a moral rebellion against indifference and spiritual numbness. To care in a time of apathy is a radical act. Compassion, once taken for granted, has become a moral stand, a conscious decision to feel in a world that encourages detachment. The narrator portrays compassion not as sentimentality, but as courage. The courage to stay open when it's easier to close off, to believe in goodness when cynicism feels safer. In this moral rebellion, each heart that chooses love becomes a beacon against the spreading cold. The world may not immediately change, but the vibration of kindness shifts the unseen atmosphere around us. One compassionate soul can influence 10 others, and so begins the quiet revolution of spirit. The narrator concludes that if humanity is to heal, it will not be through power or ideology, but through millions of small, unseen acts of love that remind us what it truly means to be human. True strength lies in gentleness with boundaries. The narrator begins by redefining strength, not as domination or control, but as the ability to remain gentle without losing one's center. In a time when harshness is mistaken for power and loudness for confidence, true strength is found in quiet restraint. Gentleness is not weakness, it is the discipline of the heart. It takes far more courage to stay calm amid provocation than to react in anger. Yet, gentleness alone is not enough. It must be protected by healthy boundaries. The narrator describes boundaries as spiritual armor, invisible lines that protect the sacredness of our energy and peace. To be kind does not mean to be naive. To forgive does not mean to allow harm. Real gentleness is firm but compassionate, soft yet grounded. It flows from inner stability, not fear of conflict. When one learns to say no with love, to step back without resentment, and to hold peace even when others project chaos, that is the true embodiment of strength. We must pair discernment truth with compassion care, being wise as serpents, gentle as doves. Here, the narrator invokes an ancient teaching, the balance between the serpent and the dove. The serpent symbolizes discernment, alertness, and the ability to see through deception. The dove represents peace, purity, and kindness. Together, they form a complete spiritual posture for navigating a world of confusion. To be wise as serpents means to observe deeply, to detect falsehood without bitterness, and to guard the truth. To be gentle as doves means to hold compassion even for those who are lost in illusion. The narrator warns that if we have truth without love, we become rigid and cold. If we have love without truth, we become blind and easily misled. The power lies in integration, seeing clearly while still caring deeply. This sacred balance allows us to act with clarity without losing warmth, to confront darkness without becoming it. In the midst of societal chaos, this union of truth and care becomes a living example of spiritual maturity. Wisdom should never turn cold. It must remain approachable and healing. Finally, the narrator reminds us that wisdom is not meant to elevate us above others, but to draw us closer to them. True wisdom carries warmth. It comforts, guides, and heals, never intimidates or isolates. Cold intellect can analyze, but only warm wisdom can transform.
Thank
When
you. That's
wisdom
very
loses
kind.
compassion, it becomes pride disguised as insight. The narrator urges us to remain approachable, to embody light in such a way that others feel safe to step closer to truth. Wisdom that heals does not shout, it listens. It sees flaws and still chooses understanding. It knows boundaries, yet never builds walls. In a fragmented world, such wisdom becomes medicine, restoring trust, inspiring courage, and reminding humanity that enlightenment without love is empty, but love guided by wisdom is divine. Everyday kindness, listening, gratitude, presence becomes the spark that reignites collective hope. The narrator begins by emphasizing that the transformation humanity seeks does not begin in grand revolutions, but in the smallest moments of daily life. It is through everyday kindness, a genuine smile, a word of encouragement, a moment of true listening, that the collective spirit begins to heal. In a world saturated with distraction and noise, presence itself becomes a rare and precious gift. To listen without judgment, to give thanks even for simple blessings, to show up fully when someone needs comfort. These are the quiet sparks that reignite hope. The narrator notes that hope does not return in dramatic bursts, but is a gentle flame passed from one heart to another through acts of care. Every instance of patience and understanding sends out ripples that touch lives far beyond what we can see. In this way,
Thank you.
everyday
Yes,
kindness
that's right.
becomes not only a moral
Oh, I see.
choice, but a form of energy, a vibration that restores warmth to a weary world. True change begins in ordinary interactions that remind people they matter. The narrator explains that society often searches for transformation in leaders, systems, or technology, yet real change begins in the spaces between people. When we look someone in the eye and make them feel seen, we remind them of their worth. When we express gratitude, we reaffirm that goodness still exists. When we offer empathy instead of criticism, we create the emotional safety where
Excuse me, I
growth
think
can
you dropped
happen.
this.
Oh,
These
thank you
simple
so much.
gestures are deceptively powerful. They counteract the loneliness and alienation spreading through modern life. The narrator paints vivid imagery. A stranger helped on the street, a friend consoled during a hard day, a community gathering to support one of its members. Each of these moments is like a small pulse of light. Together, they weave a luminous network of connection across humanity. This is where renewal begins, not in systems, but in souls, not in policies, but in presence. The narrator invites sharing stories of these shifts to build connection and belonging. To nurture this healing, the narrator encourages viewers to share their own experiences, stories of kindness given or received, moments when compassion shifted despair into hope. These stories are not meant for ego, but for inspiration. When shared, they remind others that goodness is still alive, even if quietly. The act of storytelling becomes a communal ritual, a modern form of spiritual communion. Through these shared reflections, people begin to feel part of something larger, a living movement of empathy and belonging. The narrator concludes that when we speak of kindness, we amplify it. When we witness love in action, we awaken it within ourselves. And so, through listening, gratitude, and presence, the spark of everyday goodness grows, lighting the path for collective renewal and human reconnection. Despite chaos, every person can be a source of light. The narrator begins softly, acknowledging the turbulence of our age, a time when fear spreads faster than truth, and the world often feels too heavy to heal. Yet within this noise, each soul still holds the power to radiate calm. Chaos, the narrator says, is not the end. It is the condition in which light proves its strength. A single flame may seem small, but its glow becomes most visible in darkness. Every person, no matter how ordinary, carries this potential. The light is not born from perfection or certainty, but from presence, from choosing peace when anger would be easier, from offering understanding when the world demands judgment. The narrator reminds us that illumination begins quietly, a deep breath before reacting, a moment of kindness extended to a stranger, a choice to forgive rather than retaliate. These moments do not make headlines, yet they ripple outward, calming unseen corners of the human spirit. The message is simple. In the midst of chaos, become what the world has forgotten, a calm, steady light. Kindness interrupts cycles of cruelty, faith grounds us amid confusion, and compassion becomes a form of spiritual leadership. The narrator then shifts from reflection to action. Kindness, they explain, is not weakness, it is disruption. It breaks the loop of bitterness that keeps humanity trapped in fear. When cruelty meets compassion, the chain of reaction is broken. One gentle act can reset the emotional rhythm of an entire day, sometimes even a life. Faith, meanwhile, becomes our anchor. Not blind belief, but trust. In goodness, in truth, in the quiet laws of love that continue to work even when unseen.
Leave him alone.
In confusion and conflict, faith steadies the heart, reminding us that light is never truly lost, only hidden by clouds. Compassion, the narrator continues, is the new form of leadership our world needs, leadership without domination. To lead through compassion is to guide by example, to hold space for healing rather than demand control. It is power expressed through care, not conquest. The closing message: stay anchored in truth, practice gentle strength, and live your faith through patient, daily goodness. In the final reflection, the narrator's voice grows warm and resolute. The true path forward, they say, is neither grand nor dramatic. It is steady, consistent, and deeply human. Stay anchored in truth, even when deception feels easier. Practice gentle strength, the kind that stands firm without hostility. And above all, live your faith not in proclamations, but in quiet actions. Patience, gratitude, listening, forgiveness. These are the everyday rituals of light. The narrator concludes, the world may shake, but the soul that chooses love never collapses. Be that steady flame, calm, unwavering, kind. From your light, others will remember their own